What's up, everybody? It's Alex from Heavy New York. We are at Brooklyn Bazaar, and we got Matt of the almighty Gatecreeper. Thank you so much for your time, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Hey everyone.
Yeah, it's so awesome to have you here. Your new album, Deserted, absolutely brutal. You just want to give like a rundown on how like the making of this record was, like the recording, all that fun stuff?
Sure. Well, Chase and Eric write most of the songs and make demos, usually with Pro Tools or whatever they're using on their laptop to record demos. They send me the ideas, the guitar ideas, usually with a programmed drum track as well. Eric's pretty good at programming drums, just so I get an idea of what they're looking for as to fit with the riffs. Once I hear the demos, I usually just kind of feel it out as far as what I can actually do as a drummer in the physical real world, you know what I mean? I figure out my sticking, my footing. Sometimes I'll try to figure out a way to maybe groove it out a little bit more or make it more of what like an actual drummer would play, tinker with fills and just try to spice it up a little bit. But we all work pretty closely together as far as coming up with the parts. So even when it comes to me doing my parts, I get a lot of feedback and a lot of help from the rest of the band. So
That's awesome. I've noticed that this record is it's like consistently brutal. Like I feel like this record pulls no punches. So like, did maybe like the making of each song get a little bit easier since you kind of have like an underlying formula that?
Sure. Well, I agree with that. I think one of the things we were trying to do is focus on the things that worked well with our last album and kind of just trim the fat, if you will. I mean, Sonoran Deprivation was already a very stripped down, very basic record, but we tried to go even more so with Deserted and focus more on traditional songwriting structures, I think. So there's not a lot of filler, I guess you would say, or relenting moments. Like we did make a conscious effort to try to keep things flowing and like you said, brutal the whole time, but also very simplistic and straightforward. So paying attention to things like what order the songs come in on the record, things like that, simple things we've done to try to make the record more cohesive and more powerful from front to back. So
yeah, I don't know if this like maybe the most appropriate question to ask you specifically, but I know that in between the last record and this one, you know, two of your members were in Spirit Adrift as
Sure.
well. Do you think that maybe them like participating in a newer project maybe help bring a little extra elements of Gatecreeper?
Sure, I think Spirit Adrift is more Nate's project, so that's his baby, and he does most of the writing for that project, whereas with Gatecreeper, Eric and Chase might write most of the music with help, of course. You know, Nate contributes, and I'm sure it's the other way around in Spirit Adrift. But yeah, there's a lot of, you know, they'd be foolish not to learn from each other, and you can tell that they do. They being around each other and playing with each other, learning how we all do this. We adjust to each other. We learn how each other plays, and we kind of just we've all been growing together as musicians for the past several years. So I do think there is an influence back and forth between the two bands. Yes,
absolutely. Now, as a drummer, does it, you kind of in a way answered the question talking about like the songwriting process, but does it help to have music before you lay down the rhythm and the beat first, or do you sometimes have like a whole drum section laid out and maybe the band would like write riffs and vocals?
It's usually the opposite. Typically we'll do the parts based off what the song requires. So first and foremost, we're trying to write almost poppy songs. I'm loath to use that word, but we're trying to make songs with a very traditional song structure. Verse, chorus, bridge, you know, things like that. Hooks, things that'll make it more palatable almost, I would say. So one thing we've noticed is that we do get a lot of people who, you know, they might be into some kind of hard rock that they hear on the radio or whatever, but they've never really dipped their toes in death metal. You know, we're writing songs that a lot of people, even without an extensive death metal background, can relate to and enjoy. So I think to do that, yeah, we kind of have to start with the riff. That's basically the foundation of our band is the riff. If you ask any of us, I'd say it's guitar riff driven, and that's where we need to start. That's our foundation, and everything else kind of falls into place after that.
Yeah. You mentioned like you're kind of like in a way like a starting band for people who are getting into death metal, because like, you know, I saw you play on the Cannibal Corpse Power Trip tour. That's like, you know, a death metal fan's dream. But like, correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't you once do I don't know if it was a tour or show where you were like opening for Ghostmain or something?
We did. We've done some interesting things in the past couple of years. We did open a show for Ghostmain in Los Angeles, and From what I understand, he was having like regional support from a lot of hardcore and metal bands, and that's something that I think is going to become more and more common. Is that my perspective on it is that I think that it's a lot of artists or bands want to associate themselves with more like extreme underground forms of art as a way of showing credibility. I'm not saying that's good or bad one way or the other. It's not a knock on anybody, but yeah, I see there's a lot of that, a lot of cross pollination or interaction between different music scenes and people. I think just in general, even us, the guys in Gatecreeper, we all like a lot of different kinds of music, and I'm not going to be the guy who's going to stand up and say I only listen to death metal or I only listen to this or that. Like, I'm influenced by a lot of different music. I think all the guys in Gatecreeper are, and I think that makes us stronger musicians, and it makes us having a wider range of influences and skills to draw from. It helps us make better death metal. That's my opinion.
Absolutely.
And I think that carries over to different genres as well. So
yeah. Well, if you look at like death metal, to say that your band is death metal, I almost feel like it's kind of vague now. Like, are you death metal like Cannibal Corpse? Are you death metal like At the Gates? Are you death metal like Obscura?
Sure, yeah. And there's so many subgenres and different ways of doing it, but I think at the end of the day, all good music in any genre needs to be focused on good songwriting.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what we're working on.
Yeah. And Ghostmane, like, is a good example of an artist. Actually, he's playing in New York City tonight, and he brought out Harm's Way with him, and then the last time he brought out Vane.
Sure.
So, like,
that sounds about right. So
yeah, there you go. Now, when it comes to being a drummer live, obviously, I've always said that being a drummer, I feel like, is the most pressuring instrument, because there's a famous saying, your drummer sucks, your band sucks, in a way. And you have to hold the rhythm beat together. So when it comes to playing live, do you try to execute like the material and all the beats exactly how you were executing it on the album, or is there kind of any room for improvising?
I do my best. A lot of the times, especially when we were getting ready for this tour, this is the first time we're playing some of these songs live, and I struggled for whatever reason to remember exactly how I was pulling things off in the studio. I kind of black out in the studio. I'm very that's where I feel most of the pressure, as opposed to the live setting, is in the studio, because it's forever. It's going to be recorded. So some of the things I came up with in the studio, when I was going back and trying to recreate them for a live setting, I was kind of like, oh wow, how did I do that? So I had to sit down and I'm real big on being efficient. So if I can find an easier way to do something that I did on the record and make it sound the same, I would prefer to do that, because live, I want to put most of my energy into kind of just going off. You know what I mean? Like, people like to see me going crazy and sweating and spitting and making faces and really looking like I'm going through it. The music, for drum-wise at least, for Gatecreeper is very straightforward and very simple for death metal, in my opinion. So I have a lot of room to put that extra energy into hitting as hard as I can every note, and to really just giving a powerful performance. So I don't worry too much about playing everything exactly the same as I did, as long as it sounds the same. Like I said, some of the stickings or whatever will change. I'll find a more efficient way to do it. But as long as it sounds close or almost exactly, that's what I'm after.
Absolutely. And I'd imagine, because I heard, this probably doesn't apply to death metal at all, but from talking to drummers, I'd imagine during the chorus you hit the ride cymbal more, and then you always incorporate crashes when certain parts end. Or I could just be talking out of my ass right now.
I don't think I ever thought of it that way, like the ride is for the chorus, or I don't know. I never thought of it that way. Okay. We kind of just I'm very instinctual in my playing, and I think a lot of us do this in this band. It's like when we're writing a part, it's like, oh, this part sounds like this one part from that one band that we really like, and I'll just start there. That's my point of reference. Like, oh, this sounds like an Obituary song, and he was doing this at this part. Maybe I'll try something like that and just kind of see how it goes. Yeah. I think most musicians are like that as far as what they're influenced by. You kind of have a catalog of music or influences that you draw from, and when you hear something that reminds you of something, which all music does, everything you come up with always reminds you of something else, because it's got to come from somewhere. Yeah. And that's just kind of how I start, where I go from.
Well, being an instrument that I always thought, there's no melody incorporated in there. So I thought, as a guitar player, piano player, you play this note it might not fit with this chord progression or something like that, but like how like an instrument that has no melodies, how do you know to hit the snare there, the tom there, the cymbal there, and all that?
Well, like I said earlier, I get a lot of help from the rest of the band as far as coming up with the drum parts and stuff, and we really try to make sure that there's a lot of interplay between the bass drum and the snare drum in Gatecreeper. It sounds really simple, and it is really simple, but we really are trying to keep everything locked in with the rhythms of the riffs. So if the riff kind of has like a little fluctuation, you'll see the bass, the interplay between the bass drum and the snare drum kind of follow that as a not a melody, but like a rhythmic pattern that enforces the riff. So
awesome.
Yeah.
And before we go, I just want to ask a question. Let's just do the gear rundown. What are some of your weapons of choice for drums?
Right now, I'm playing a lot of Tama stuff. My kit is an old Tama DX from the early 90s. So it's deep toms, big deep toms. I think I'm running 12 by 11 and 13 by 12 for the rack toms, 16 by 16 floor, 22 by 16 bass, I believe. I just got a new snare today. One of my friends brought me a snare because I exploded mine a few nights ago, and I think it's a Pearl. I'm not sure. I'll have to double check, but I'm running all Peisty right now. I'm really big into the Peisty 900 series. Heavy crashes, 19 and 20, 19 on my left, 20 on the right. I'm running an old Peisty Alpha Metal Ride 22-inch. It's a really heavy, really pingy ride cymbal, and that's what I like because I don't tend to crash a lot on my ride. I like to just get a ping out of it. I keep the 20-inch crash right above that if I want to get some crash action going. For pedals, I'm running the Speed Cobra, Thomas Speed Cobra right now. It's an older model. It's one of the first ones that came out. I've got a lot of aftermarket parts on it. I've got some Trick connector rod, and I'm running the new Trick dead blow beaters. I've also got a few parts on there from ACD Unlimited from Austria. I'm running the beater shifters, and sometimes I play around with the direct drive conversion for the Speed Cobras, but right now I'm running them chain drive. So
awesome. And sticks?
Sticks, I break so many sticks that and since I don't have any endorsements or anything, I don't like to spend a lot of money on them because I'll tend to break 3 or 4 pairs a night. It gets very costly. So right now I'm running sound percussion sticks, 2Bs from just the generic ones from Guitar Center. So shout out sound percussion. Thank you.
There you go. So before we go, I want to thank you so much for your time today. Is there just anything else with Gatecreeper that you would like to promote?
Well, we do have a lot of stuff coming up. I think probably the next big thing we're doing after tour is the Decibel Metal and Beer Fest in Los Angeles. That is middle of December. It's about a week and a half after we get back from this tour. So I want to say like the 13th or 14th. I could be wrong, but be on the lookout for that. We're really excited. I'm excited to play with Carcass. That's I'm very excited about that. So
all the stuff you're allowed to talk about.
Yeah.
There's more coming, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But thank you so much, Matt.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Of course. Everybody, we are here with Matt of Gatecreeper. Pick up Deserted. If you haven't already, this is Alex from Heavy New York. We'll see you next time.